Okay, we are now live. We are recording. So, Minister Jew, I got some questions before you get into the meat and potatoes of actually what you do. And I just want to go over some terms so people are clear when we're using the words. What exactly do they mean? First, I'm just going to start with the word quantum. What does that mean when you use the word quantum?
All right, this is a great question. Quantum means it's a plethora of things, but for the most part, we're talking about light, all right, and the principles of light on the side of the wave, right? Light operates in two facets. You have particle and you have wave. To make it real simple, what you're looking at right now, wherever you're at, in your living room, in your car, that's the particle side of reality. Anything that the physical senses can indicate, sight, touch, smell, hearing, all of these things we consider to be particle physics, traditional physics. Quantum physics is dealing with very, 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 very small pieces of matter, like electrons, atoms, mesons, quarks, the things that the physical eye, it doesn't register. It doesn't become part of the everyday experience, but it is responsible for everything that you see on the particle side. So the light bulb that you're looking at now, the television that you're looking at now, the phone that you're holding in your hand, the earplugs that you have in your ears, all of these things are able to exist because of small particles called photons, electrons, etc. The whole physical world is just a projection, or what I like to call the shadow. This is really the shadow side of reality. What we think is, what we can see with our eyes and our physical senses. This is really the shadow side. The quantum side is where all of the magic takes place in order for these things to become manifest on this side of the veil of what we can see. So quantum just means very, 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 very small particles of light. And the way that I like to talk about it is primarily in the wave state. Although we still call it quantum, dealing with the particle too, but it is the wave in which I like to deal with, because that's where the creativity lies.
Okay, dope. Okay. The next question is, what is imagination? I know you also deal with that. So I just want to get a clear, firm understanding on what is imagination.
Imagination is to unlock quantum consciousness. It is the doorway to get to the other side of the veil. The way that I always like to explain it in some of the YouTube videos is, you can't name one thing that man or woman has ever created that didn't come out of their imagination. The very first anything, the first telephone, the first microwave, the first toilet, the first whatever came out of somebody's imagination. Why? Because there was no pattern for it originally. So they had to create it out of a desire, out of a need, out of a want. And that image, according to what that desire or that want or need, started to be facilitated in a place that didn't exist yet in the physical or particle side of reality. So we like to give credence. A lot of times what we do is, we become object worshipers. We'll worship even pyramids, and sometimes I like to touch buttons on purpose, but we'll worship some of these outer things and not give credence to the originator or the creator of that object, which is that individual's imagination. The pyramids first had to be developed in somebody's imagination. They had to see it internally first in order for it to become manifest in the physical world. Somebody had to see the airplane in their mind's eye first, in their imagination, before you can get on that thing and travel from here to Japan. So it's like anything else. If you lose something, if you lose the physical blueprint for it, it's okay, because you have the know-how in the template in the mind's eye, which is the imagination. And some people think it's the pineal, but it's not. It's actually the hippocampus in the brain, which is responsible for flashing those images in the mind. But the imagination is the doorway to unlock quantum potential or quantum consciousness. You have to be able to go into the unknown and create what it is that you want on that side first. So at the beginning of the conversation, I said I'd like to deal with the wave. The imagination is where the wave exists. That's the doorway to get into the wave, because there it hasn't manifested yet, but you're looking to magnetize it towards you, right, through the magnetic field of the earth to bring it into fruition in some form or fashion, whether it be physical healing in the body or physical manifestation of something that you desire or a goal that you have. So that's what the imagination is, and it resides inside of the hippocampus in the right hemisphere of the brain, to be specific, if you want to get technical and start talking about brain parts. But that's where you'll have the ability to create inner imagery, which we call imagination, is in the hippocampus in the right hemisphere of the brain.
Wow. Okay. Now, staying right there on imagination. Those that are using their imagination at its highest level, and those that aren't, what's going on there? Is it because one person is a good person, a good woman? Is it the other person and they're an asshole? Why are some people, and even throughout history, it's been a select few throughout the world that has become these global figures with their imagination? But at the bottom of the pyramid, the majority of the people, they don't have that talent. So what is going on right there? Why is there such a separation?
Well, this is interesting because I like to deal with the personification that they call Christ. When he says, I came to get the sinners, right? So this is a really good question for me, because I like to get the people who are at the bottom, you know what I mean, to rise to the top. So it's a couple things. One, I'll start with the astrological science first. Some of the souls that all of us are here, we have different attributes that over multiple lifetimes, we've acquired a certain level of awareness. And we're able to, a chart can point to that. We can see where a person may have Mercury trine Neptune, or Uranus is strongly positioned. And we can say this person has a gift of highly or sensitive imagination or intuition, right? Or this person has a stroke of genius, right? So some people are just playing the natural cards that, and I don't even want to say cards that they've been dealt, it's what they've acquired over a duration. But as we come back into these physical bodies to ultimately remember that we're gods, we forget these things, and then it just seems like it's happenstance when stuff happens to us, but it's not. These are things we've actually acquired. So that's one way that we can indicate. Now, once you get the information, though, like if you're in the range of my voice tonight, that doesn't even matter. The astrologics of it doesn't matter. It becomes a perk to know that, but you don't have to have those markers in order to attain what it is that I'm expressing here. What hinders individuals from being able to reach those levels is trauma. If we're dealing with brain parts, we know that whenever there's trauma, when a person's constantly going through problems and stress, it actually shrinks the hippocampus down in the brain, okay? So if it becomes tampered with or shrunken or non-functional, then that person's ability to be able to create new ways to get out of situations and problems, what happens is they continuously find themselves going through the same loop because they don't have the creative juice, because the structure in the brain that's responsible for allowing that creativity to flow, or the theta wave to become active, because the theta wave is only activated through the hippocampus in the brain. You can't find theta activity in any other structure in the brain. And the theta wave is responsible for the creativity that the person is able to. What happens is you're in impoverished neighborhood. You're constantly watching news, bad news, right? The rent due, and you ain't got it. All of these things that bombard us on a regular basis, right? Which starts to create stress, starts to shrivel up this structure that allows you to become more respondent to, the creative passions that you have as an individual. So this is why I teach my members, look, you have to monitor what you allow to come in on the particle side of reality, via what you hear, what you're reading, what you're seeing, etc. Because if you keep eventually these things start to have a physiological effect on structures in the brain. So I have something called a self-analysis worksheet, because when they can't talk to ministers, they have to have something to be able to monitor their behavior, to be able to watch, if they're on the crest side of light or on the trough side of light, meaning light has two functions. Are you on the high side of the wave, which is the crest, or are you on the low side of the wave, which is the trough? So most of the time, we're always operating either at the trough or somewhere in between, right? So if you're not having a steady dose of gratitude every day and finding things that you're happy for every day, then you'll 9 out of 10 be getting a stressful life, and then you'll think everything's a conspiracy. You'll be full of skepticism about everything. All of these things start to take root in the brain, and it shapes who we are as individuals. So one is, some people are just born with these gifts to be able to facilitate the imagination on a higher level. And two, when we're not born with the gift, we're bombarded with a bunch of things that we're allowing into our sensory perceptions to dominate us. And this is what hinders us, and we become stressful. And once the stress kicks in, you can almost forget about it. So this is why when people like Jay-Z or somebody else make it out of the hood, people feel like it's an impossibility. Like, how did he do it? He got to be Illuminati, or that type of dialogue starts to come up, because the skepticism is there based upon a person's projection of their own reality and what they think is plausible and or possible. So those are the two things, man, that either hinders or naturally allows us to grow into that potential.
Okay, I want to stay right there, because I want to actually go down the list briefly from what you've seen of our senses and what can we do either on the defensive side, offensive side. So I'm all right. What kind of sounds should we be hearing to unlock that imagination, to kind of start neutralizing that trauma? Is there any sounds that we can do or listen to?
Well, I say this: everybody, perception is the key, right? And so, and I'm prefacing or giving a outline first on this with the word perception, because everybody takes to things differently, right? People got different cosmic makeups, right? And their being can be totally different. So whatever lifts your spirit, that makes you feel good when you hear it, right, is what you should listen more to. So for some, that could be R&B. For some, that can be jazz. For some, that can be Hindu chants. It just depends on a person's makeup and what they listen to that makes them feel vibrant. So it's not one set thing that a person needs to listen to. It's what does your spirit gravitate to when you hear it that makes you feel alive, right? That brings you a sense of vigor and motivation. And, it might be some trap music you might listen to that gets you amped up and ready to go do your thing, right? So it just depends. So it's not one cookie cutter sound. It's more so, what do you recognize to be divinity as far as what you're hearing that makes you feel good, that gives you the motivation to carry on? So it just depends, what that is for each individual.
Okay, so there's not because you said we're different beings, so there's not a universal, all right, taste this, and this should make you respond a certain type of way, or listen to this, or it should make you respond a certain type of way. So basically, how to unlock it is kind of subjective, huh?
It's all subjective. It's based upon how you feel about what you hear. See, the quantum field responds to two things: images and how you feel. So once you merge these two things together, now we have an elevated emotion and thought, right? So we start off by what makes us feel good, right? What are we listening to that makes us feel good? And that has to be a selection that a person makes subjectively. Like different people like different R&B singers. Some people think Beyonce is whack. Other people think she's the greatest thing that ever walked the earth. So it just depends on a person's subjective nature on what they gravitate toward and make that subjective decision work for them. You know what I mean? So that's the best answer that I can give to that question.
Okay. Now, in terms of the trauma, before we get to the trauma that we seen ourselves, I'll give you an example. My mother, when she was 2 weeks old, her mama with my grandmother, she killed her husband. She set him on fire. They had some domestic things going on. So even though my mom was a youth, she was 2 weeks old, that's her experience. Okay. That's also my experience, even though I wasn't there. Okay. So there's times in my life when I haven't had favor. Now, before I start to neutralize my experience, how do I kind of purge the things that my mom went through that she gave to me through birth? How do I sidestep that negative charge?
Well, this is a great question. Phobias can be passed down. This has been scientifically proven. We pass things down in the genes all the time. And they're getting passed down through two things again. What are we dealing with, right? Because if your mother, subconsciously, she picked that program up, even at 2 weeks old. There's nothing that get past the subconscious mind, right? She may not have been able to process it in words, but it doesn't matter. The words become, the right brain is way more superior than the left brain anyway. So anytime we're trying to process something with simply words, then we actually at a deficit already. But the images, the sounds, etc., all of these things that are being processed through the right brain, they last with us forever. Sometimes when we hear the word subconscious, we think that this is an invisible thing, right? But literally we have structures in our brain that tie us into subconscious thinking, primarily in the limbic brain. So what has to happen is, one, you have to know the technique of how to recreate situations in the past, which is a technique that I created called the positron pass. And I just explained it briefly. The past is just as uncertain as the future. Now, you might hear that for the first time and be like, this dude is tripping. You mean to tell me something that happened 20 years ago is uncertain? I saw it. I remember it. I went through it, etc., right? I can go back and look at it on the wall. It's there, right? But see, when you study quantum physics, right, Einstein and Podolsky, one of his close comrades, when they were, because you got to remember, Einstein at first was all for quantum theory, right? Because it supported some of his mathematics and his relativity theory. But then when they started to pull the layers back of what this interpretation actually meant, the latter parts of his life, he tried to disprove it. He called it spooky action at a distance. He then went on to say God doesn't play dice with the universe because essentially quantum physics says you don't know what's going to happen until you make an observation. So later in his career, when he finally realized that quantum physics was the truth, and he tried to come up with all these thought experiments, and none of them actually panned out. The quantum mechanics theory and mathematics always came out to be right and exact, no matter how he tried to circumvent it. He then had to admit, I think it was in 1931, I actually got the newspaper clip, where him and another colleague named Podolsky, they said that according to the quantum law, the past is just as unpredictable as the future, according to the observation principle. So what does that mean? Consciousness is the Lord. That's your God, is consciousness itself, meaning conscious thought and subconscious thought. That's God, right? Once we understand that and we say, okay, thought, just like you know how you got these fancy DVRs, you know, you can rewind stuff. you can pause it and go back and play it from here. The hippocampus has the same function, right? So it's the same thing in consciousness. These devices are only mimicking what goes on inside of our being, right? Heating and cooling, thyroid, right? You know, whatever. We go on and on. But essentially, you have to learn how to rewrite the past, right? Rewrite the past for your mother, right? Rewrite the past for your grandmother, because the root of that issue is a domestic problem. Right? It was a domestic issue that brought that situation on. So you would have to go back and rewrite that memory, right? Because you're still in the lineage of mommy, grandmommy, granddaddy, right? So you can adjust that memory for grandma, for mama, if you rewrite it, especially if you got a picture of grandma and granddad, right? You can readjust that image. Right? So that takes practice, though. You have to learn how to prune the mind to be able to appropriate that type of imagery and catch the feeling and the mood of it actually taking place in real time, right? So you're doing in your mind what you're doing with these devices in your home, called a DVR, rewinding. You know, some TV screens, you can play 8 games at the same time. These are all functions of the hippocampus. The hippocampus has something called pre-play, right? Where let me show you how dope your body is, and this is where the Egyptians got the intuitive nature to build a pyramid. You actually have something in your body called pyramidal cells, right? And you have a load of them right around the hippocampus, right? They're shaped like pyramids, right? Cells in the body, and the hippocampus. Say for instance, Minister Jew is going to a location that he's never been before. I've never been to London, right? On my way to London from Chicago, right, the hippocampus has the ability to create the spatial dynamics of London in my brain before I even touch foot in that physical location. It's called pre-play. So the hippocampus will start to create a landscape of the geometrical layout of London before my physical body even lands in London. This is fact. This is all neuroscience fact. It's not theoretical. These are facts. So once we learn that it is our own being that is the God body, literally, then we start to take these principles and practice them in consciousness to create external events, to create internal healing, to rewrite the past, right? That's the real time machine. So you see all these movies talking about, oh, we're going back into time, you know, Back to the Future, right? And then you see in Back to the Future in one of the movies, they had the Cubs winning the World Series like in 2015 or 16, and that's exactly what happened. And I be trying to show people that it's a science to that. It's not by coincidence. So, you know, you have to learn how to rewrite and reclassify that memory of your grandmother and your grandfather going through that domestic dispute or those domestic disputes.
Okay, because now as you're talking, like 7 windows in my mind. So you said the past is uncertain. So it's very possible right now that wizards are able to create a past that is not actually technically real. For example, like the movie Troy, Achilles wasn't an actual person. But because there was a movie of Achilles, it makes it law. Is that what you're saying? So technically now Achilles is a part of the global consciousness. So that event with Helen of Troy actually happened.
Absolutely. The ability to create something that doesn't exist, which is the imagination, again, this is the best way that I can put it. Your thoughts, like you know how we think, we're thinking right now, in the now, and then you could think of something and drop it, and tomorrow you don't think about it at all. You think it's over. It's done. Just because it was yesterday. No. Your past follows you into your present moment, into your current moment. So if you go in consciousness and create something or recreate something that's happened in the past, it will meet you in the present moment now. It's the equivalent to matter and antimatter meeting one another is what actually happens. Because, see, when you're recreating something, what you're doing is I always like to use it in the terms of light. When you start to lose protons from an atom, right, it starts to go through beta decay. It actually starts to decay. And it turns into whatever is the lower element on the periodic table of elements. So what we're doing, and in that, it's releasing something called a positron. That's why I named the technique the positron pass, because I'm mimicking light and what light is doing when it's going through these radioactive states. So when what you're doing is you're saying, I'm taking something and I'm decomposing it. I'm reclassifying it. I'm restructuring it. But what happens when a positron is emitted, which is the opposite of an electron, it's spinning in a different direction than the electron. But when an electron and a positron meet, they let off something called a photon, which is light, which is what you're getting from the sun. So in essence, when we create something or recreate something in the past, we're generating a new form of light to meet us in the future, to catch us later, right? So we're waiting on time for light to move through time to create an event, to create a circumstance, to create a situation, which is what we do every day, but we're just not conscious of it. So you argued with your spouse yesterday, right? And then a couple of days later, it's something. It may not be something with your spouse, but that energy meets you 2 or 3 days later, and you have a real sucky day, right? Or something else negative happens. All of a sudden, you get a ticket, or this happens. That energy meets you in the future. It doesn't stay where it's at. It proceeds into the future. This is why you have to be careful about what it is that you're thinking, what it is that you're saying to yourself and your inner self-talk, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely, man, you can create something or recreate something in the past, and it becomes a fact in the future.
Okay, so can a person, the Rothschilds have a control? This what they say. All right. So when Amschel was doing his thing and programming his children for global takeover, whatever, can a person go back in that space right there and put themselves in the picture, like exactly like he's?
Absolutely. We do this, man.
On the wall.
And Pooh, you can, but I want to say this to the listening audience. We have to be very wise about what we choose to tamper with, right? We have to be very wise. So some dialogue I don't like to get into because people will be irresponsible. And I don't want that type of thing to happen.
Right.
So to answer your question bluntly, yes. But to give examples of how it's done, I ain't going to do that.
That's fair. Okay. Now people, as long as they know it's possible. Okay. Oh, okay. Because when you mentioned tamper, Biff in Back to the Future, that was a reality that was going on. Because something got tampered, and then when Marty woke up, Biff was in it. It's like Donald Trump, but Biff, it was living. He was the man. Marty woke up in this reality that is that dude. So what that showed us is it's many of us is going on simultaneously, right?
Correct.
And the movie, the one with Jet Li as well, that it was many us's happening simultaneously. Minister Jew, man, the people at the bottom. People at the bottom, I think, are stuck in literalism, right? Because you mentioned imagination and how that's important. And without the imagination, what are you? Just on the surface level, what are the ways that people can just on their day-to-day to break away from the and hit me. I had an abortion. I'm from the ghetto. I'm not good with money. Is it mantras? Is it exercise? Is it breathing techniques to start reversing immediately that bad luck that a lot of people are going through?
Well, it is some things you could do. Breathing is important. You mentioned breathing. Learning to take longer exhales when you're breathing is very, very, very beneficial for stress. All right. It activates the vagus nerve, which is dealing with all of the intelligence that goes under the radar, like the heartbeat, the lungs expanding, all of these things that we don't consciously deal with, right? We don't tell our lungs to expand consciously. We're not telling our hearts to beat consciously. Yet this intelligence inside of us is operating this thing on a level below the surface mind. So when we exhale, we take longer exhales, it actually stimulates this part of our being and that part of our intelligence so that we can calm ourselves down in order to give ourselves time to think. So just taking 20 minutes out of your day, right, practicing taking longer exhales, right, that's something that you can do. Another thing that you can do right off the top to start to bring some balance and peace into the body, putting your face, submerging your face in cold water, right? Whether in your bathtub or in your sink or you got a basin, submerging your face in cold water because that also stimulates the vagus nerve inside of the brain, right? This is the whole concept behind John the Baptist and the baptism. This is really what they were getting at. Learning to stimulate the vagus nerve to activate that part of the nervous system to get you more in tune with that type of intelligence, right? Praying hands. When your fingers are interlaced in the prayer position, right? It's just something that we think is just, we just do it. Nobody really asks, why do we put our hands together when we pray? Whenever your fingers are interlaced and locking with one another, that also stimulates the vagus nerve. So as you can see here, what I'm trying to get at is doing things that stimulates the vagus nerve to reduce the stress and the inflammation in the body, right, is a great way to start. So cold water to the face, praying hands gesture, and taking longer exhales out of the body are all things that you can just start doing on a regular basis. And watching what you take into your sensory perception. Get away from the news. Stop buying the morning newspaper with all the bad news in it every day. All of the negativity on social media, right? Every time something happens, we're like, roaches to filth. And here we come. We've got to all just circle around what's going on. This is so terrible. This is so bad. Yada, 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 yada. Not knowing that when we do that, we continue to collectively create more of the same circumstances. Because our observation power, which is really God in you, is what you give your attention to. You lend your energy to create more situations of the same. So somebody has to go against the current and decide to do something different or observe something else, whether it be in real life or in the imagination, to see this whole thing shift. But if we all continue to go down the same path and keep observing the same madness and anger and frustration, then we're only going to get more of the same. So these are some of the things that you can do that are practical, right? If you don't have anybody to teach you the art of imagination and how to use your emotion properly to create. So those are just some minor things that you can do.
Okay, you mentioned this, so I got to go. This is the primary teaching instrument for the majority of the world. Took them to church, but the people now.
Hold on, brother. Okay. You broke up there. I didn't hear the full question. Could you start over again?
Oh, the Bible. You had mentioned John the Baptist, and the primary teaching tool for many of us has been the scriptures. But now, lately, people are apprehensive when it comes to the Bible. They don't want to deal with it. They, it's from the white man or whatever. This Bible and imagination and the subconscious mind, is it linked together? Can I use the Bible to start gain off it that we've had post YouTube and things like that, but actually using the Bible in terms of imagination and the quantum level to start navigating? Is that possible?
Absolutely, it is. So, some of the question got broke up, but I think I get the gist of what you're asking. Absolutely, you can. Let me just say this too. What usually happens is this: we get a little conscious. We've read a couple books, right? The Stolen Legacies of the World, and all these other books, and we get conscious, and then we say, the Bible's the white man's. And then usually the first step after that is some form of Islam. And you go over there, and then you may break off to another faction of Islam, Moorish Science Temple, or 5% Nation, Gods and Earths, or NOI, whatever you may do. Then you realize, then you get some more information and say, that's really a white man religion too, and it's really Arab based, and yada 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 yada. And then you say, okay, I'm gonna leave there, and now I'm finna go to RBG, right? And then I'm finna go Black Power, and then you get over there, and then you find out about Kemet, and then you say, oh, this where it's at is Egypt, and it's Kemet, and it's the pharaohs, and we go there, and then at that point we stop right there, and then we go extra particle and turn into history buffs. And history has its place. I don't want to sound like I'm coming down on history. It has its place, but that's not what's going to get you to the next level. You want to know why? Because we've been talking about history for the last 50 years in this conscious movement, and you're still in the same predicament. But when I look at the people around me who are practicing these principles, their lives are literally changing. It's just not a debate about what's in a book or what's on a wall. They're actually having experiences from utilizing this data, because they've turned their attention away from the external world, and they went internal because they know how to use the facets of their own consciousness. So with that being said, when we get to the Bible, right, the reason that we're so upset is because we're reading it in the English translation of it. So things have become lost inside of the conversation. But if you're really diligent in your study and you take the time out to translate some of this stuff back into some of these older languages and what it was written in, you'll come to find out that they're not talking about secular history at all. This thing ain't got nothing. People read it and they say, oh, Jonah never, that's impossible. No man slept in the belly of a whale. Of course not. It's an allegory. It's a parable. And so what happens, like I said, the historical aspect of what we're looking for takes over our mind or our left brain. And we stop using our right brain, right? Well, a good book on it is called The Master and His Emissary, where they talk about how the left brain becomes so humble when it realizes the power that the right brain is able to tap into. So once you start to understand that in poetry too, this is why we love going to poetry sets, because poetry is one of the only written languages that the right brain actually interprets first, right? So if you start to realize when you're reading these holy books like the Quran and the Bible, the pyramid text, whatever it is that you're reading, you'll learn, why are these people writing these things in this allegorical, poetic nature? It's to activate a different part of your brain. But because we've been schooled to think everything is literal history, we throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, didn't no stick turn into no snake. That's not real. That's a bunch of craziness. But if you understand the allegory and you did some translation, you'll see that that stick is talking about a serpentine energy when you translate the word, right? You'll see that the single eye in the book of Luke is literally translates to the ophthalmos or the thalamus in the brain, right? You'll see these things once you start to make the translation, and then you'll realize, no, this thing is talking about internal processes of my mind, and these characters are only personifications of different states of consciousness that we pass through. And they start you off with Moses and Aaron on the journey because they're trying to get you acclimated to the left and right brain and the function. Remember, Moses had the speech impediment. He didn't talk well, making references to the right brain because it doesn't deal with language. But he said, use your brother Aaron who speaks well, which is left brain function, talking, writing, diction, etc. But Moses was the one that was doing all the miracle work, i.e. right brain, that I've been trying to get over here in this conversation. So once you start to understand that they're talking about internal processes, you don't get all caught up in the historical or the historicity of it. You start to realize that this thing is unlocking keys in consciousness, and it becomes crystal clear once you get it down to that point. So even when you say imagination in the book of Jeremiah, where it says, come down to the potter's house, and there the potter was working at his will, right? When you translate the word potter in that particular verse, it literally comes out to imagination working. What do you mean? If they're calling God the potter in this verse, but when I translate the word, you think it, when you read potter, you think it's somebody sitting somewhere molding some clay or molding or making a plate on a potter's wheel. No, that is all allegory, right, to teach you about how to put your imagination to work so that you, because what does a potter do? We start to see the similarities in the symbolism. He said there the potter was working at his will, and he was remaking or restructuring things that were spoiled, right? So what are they trying to tell you? Here goes the positron again. Something that's bad or something that's spoiled that was made, with my imagination, I can reshape it. I can rework it to build something greater, to make something new of what was previously spoiled. But I have to do it through putting my imagination to work. Hence, I wrote the book, Imagination at Work. You see? So, yes, absolutely, you can use it. And I prefer to use it simply because I like to make this analogy. It's like 2 seconds on the shot clock. I don't got time to try to run this elaborate play. I got to get the ball to Michael Jordan. I got to get the ball to Kobe Bryant. I got to get the ball to Kevin Durant. I got to get the ball to a guy that can get his shot off. I don't have time to try to get you to learn a language that is so foreign to you that it'll take you years to get it down pat. So I'm going to give you what you're used to and still be able to use what you're used to get to higher levels of being, both physically, right, in the financial world, healthy, right, if you got issues in the body, and spiritually to have spirit experiences in your consciousness to let you know that you're beyond this corporal body, right? So I would rather do it that way than try to convince you about how deep this thing is and take you through all these different measures when you can get the same function from this same book, right? And you don't have to waste more time is what I'm saying. So in essence, a door is a door. I don't care what you call it. I don't care where the door is. The door has the same function. It keeps people in. It keeps people out. It opens and it closes. I don't care what you call that wet blue stuff. You can call it agua or you can call it water. It still does the same thing. It gets you clean. It allows you to cook, right? All of these things. So I need to know the function. We can get into all the names we want. What is the function of this thing that's in front of me? What is the function of what's going on in my body? Well, you can call a heart whatever you call it in French or Dutch, or you can call it a heart, which is what we call it in English. But it does the same thing in the 7 billion bodies all across the world. So what are we really doing here? What are we really saying here? We're just creating debates and argument because we're, again, in our left brain and want to argue about the facts, the words, the this, the that. And meanwhile, we're struggling. We're not seeing any results. But we deep as hell because we didn't read 30 books. So, no. Okay, boom. So I got 2 questions for you.
The first one is, so sticking to the Bible, grandmama read it to us a certain type of way. So in Genesis, when we're looking at something, and this person begat this person, and this person begat this person, how should a person read that right there, and to make it applicable to themselves? That's number one. Number two, within imagination, and we're coming into we're coming to the physical realm, basically applying alchemy to the physical reality, being able to turn water into wine. You know what I'm saying? Now I know some things start treading into dark magic based on the intention. So I know there's a fine line between there. But within the realms of physics with our imagination, how do we get objects to move, i.e., I need this promotion, i.e., I'm house, I need that to go through this test, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, to answer your first question, it broke up, but I think I kind of get the gist of what you're saying. All of those, this begat this begat, that's just a way to show you how, again, what we talked about earlier, how things get passed down in the genes, how things get passed down as phobias or good things that get passed down in the genes as well. Like you said, from your grandmother to your mother to you. So it keeps reiterating that point that this is passed down and this is passed down. It's an external way to explain internal processes that we all go through from lineage to lineage to lineage to lineage, right? So we won't take it so literal as via the people in the book who's saying it. We know that it's really a first-person narrative that's just talking about what everybody goes through down here, which is getting things passed down and passed down and passed down and passed down, to answer that question. Now, as far as how do I make things move, man, listen, we make stuff move over at the Imagination Guru, man. We make it move. Listen, we got people getting in houses. All kind of stuff is happening for folks, man. It's so many testimonials, man. I can't even remember them all. People send us videos, people send us emails. It happens all. I give you an example. Let me give you a recent example. What's most recent is what's easier for me to remember. Lady in my membership, her name's Elizabeth, right? Her ex-husband ended up getting custody of their children, right? The judge passed the order and everything. She joined the membership. She heard some of the stuff on YouTube. She was impressed. She said, I need to try this because nothing else seems to be working. So what she did was I told her, you need to recreate the letter or the judgment that the judge made using the positron technique that I spoke about earlier. About 30 days went past. The person who was working the case ended up calling her saying something had happened at the home with the father and the kid, and she was a little concerned. And so these little winks start to appear. Things will start to happen in the matrix to mimic the internal work that you're doing, right? So when she noticed that, she said, okay, I'm picking up some traction. So she kept doing it. About another 15 days she called me back. She said, Jew, I'm still doing it. I ain't seen nothing happen since then, but I'm going to keep doing it. I said, look, because remember, these things have to move through time, right, in order to catch up with you. So I said, look, you don't panic. You just keep doing the technique. I got an email last week from Elizabeth, ecstatic. Jew, they reversed the court order. I got all my girls back at home with me. Everything is being finalized. He no longer has my children. Facts. After the court already gave the order and the kids were in custody of the father, right? So Asia had an issue with her daughter and some Social Security stuff, utilized the same technique. They told her she couldn't get a Social Security card for some personal reasons that I won't go into here, but had her do the same technique, right? They end up giving her the Social Security card. All kind of stuff be happening for people when they realize that nothing's final and that everything can be reworked and augmented. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, we walk people through these degrees. You join the membership, we got different techniques laid out for you every month. The blue light switch meditation, the wishing well visualization, your majesty visualization, the positron pass, copy and paste technique. It's a whole bunch of stuff that we've created for people to actualize self-realization so that they know that they're the creators of their own world, their own reality, etc. So, you can literally make mountains move, as they say,
Okay, Minister Jew, the majority, the people on this line are in that stage of Neo and the what spoon stage. Basically, that's what you're saying. Like, what spoon? There's nothing there. That it's the Matrix. We're in virtual reality, but there had to be an aha moment for Neo to realize what spoon, and I can fly. What bullets? I can move through there. To create that aha moment, what do the people have to do? Is it the freezing that pendulum that it talks about in the Kabbalion and rhythm? Freezing that pendulum? Is it fasting? Is it cry and forgive? To create that aha moment of the man, what spoon? Because before the people do it, they have to come to the term of what spoon, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned some good things here. You mentioned the word fasting, and that's you can do that because it stimulates the hippocampus too when you begin to fast. So that's the whole method. That's the whole reason fasting is important in a lot of these religious traditions, because it does stimulate the hippocampus in the right hemisphere of the brain, as well as frankincense too. Like I bathe with frankincense soap. I got frankincense aroma when I'm doing my visualization techniques, because frankincense also stimulates the hippocampus. So you start to find out that the body is the temple of God, and from that point you start to utilize some of the external things in the world that act as amplifiers to what you already got going on internally. But the number one thing that you must do to have the aha moment is practice, because Neo had to constantly go in that simulation, didn't he? He had to constantly go into the simulation with a teacher who knows what they're talking about and can show and prove it in their own life, right? That's the key. So he had to keep getting loaded up into the simulator and keep practicing jumping from building to building, constantly engaging Morpheus in a fight, right? Then he had to get took off the breast milk, and he had to get out there in the world and go into the matrix and have to hold his own. So it's it's practice. You have to consistently, repetitiously practice, because the practice starts to change the structures in the brain. The physiology in the brain starts to change. The brain cannot tell the difference between what's real and what's fake. The motor cortex responds the same. Let me tell you, in my book, I wrote about this, and I put one of the scientific experiments in there. Let's say, for instance, you never played the piano before, and you go in, you sit down. What they did was they usually had these things going for like 4 to 6 weeks, and they had these people practice this stuff anywhere from 2 to 4 hours every day, right? They had a group of people come in, never played the piano before. They said, look, we want you to just imagine touching the piano keys. Just imagine that you know how to play the piano key. Never physically touch the piano keys. They just imagine in their mind that they were sitting in front of a piano, gracing the piano keys, the ivory keys. Then they had another group of people come in and physically practice playing a piano. What they found out blew their minds. They found out that both groups' motor cortex responded the same way, both the group that visualized it and the group that actually touched the keys. The brain responded the same way to both control groups. You see? So once we realize that the inner man, right, the inner eye or the single eye, because that's really the thalamus, when we bring that to a singular pulse, meaning because the thalamus is regulating all of the perceptions that the body is integrating at every moment, including how you feel, right? When we single that eye, and go internally into the inner man, right, which is Jacob in the scripture, right? They tried to show you that through allegory with Jacob and Esau. They said, hold on, y'all. All right. They tried to show you that through that story with Esau, Jacob, and Isaac. They tried to show you that through parable. If you really following the story, they said that Esau was the one that went out into the field. He was constantly engaging the sense man, right? Running around, catching stuff, hunting, doing whatever he's doing, right? They're showing you how the beta wave in the brain. We're always, we're active. We're looking for stuff to engage our senses at every moment. But they said Jacob, all he did was stay on the farm or wherever he was at. All he did was sit in his tent all day. He was content sitting in his tent. That's the inner man, the one who's not focused on the external world so much. And we all know what happened. Jacob is the one that ended up getting the birthright. So these people who wrote it in story form, right? Because to try to explain this to a common person, like could you imagine trying to talk to people about neuroscience, especially when it's coming to people intuitively, right? And they may not have all of the science to validate it at the time, but it's coming from a different part of their consciousness, and so they're putting it in story form, right? And in that story, you'll see that what happened. How did Isaac get tricked to give Jacob the birthright? They said what? He tricked him. All his senses had to be engaged. What did they say? He said, but you sound like Jacob. That's hearing. Then they brought him over there and they told him, let me touch you. The sense of touch was engaged. He said, but you feel like Esau because they had put the wool on his skin. So we have the sense of touch that was engaged. Isaac, of course, was blind. He couldn't see. So we have this sense of sight being involved. And then what was Esau going to do? He was going to get some food to give to his father, which is the sense of taste, right? So you see in the story, they creatively weave all of the sensory perceptions into the story to tell you this is what you have to dupe out. You have to cancel out the sense man and go into the internal man, which is represented by Jacob, right? Or Joseph earlier in the book, which translates to the dreamer. See, so this thing is heavy, man, when you really start to get into it, man.
Okay. So before I'm sure the people got questions, but to top that off, I'm going to ask you something, and then, please let the people know what you have where they can follow up with you, because I know some things are sparking in people and they're ready to go. So the who, what, when, why. When we're talking about the aha moment, which, sometimes is serendipity. Who, what, when, why. So throughout the day, is that basically the main thing about the training? Who, I guess, who you are, what, why, when, where. Is that the training? And it kind of starts in the mental of, why am I doing this? Why do I want what I want? Being present. And then is that the mental aspect of it? And then what is the physical aspect of the training?
Okay. I think the most important of those is why, right? Why do I want what I want, right? What do I want? That's the first thing I ask my members. What did you sign up for? What are you trying to accomplish, right? The how moment, that's the mystery. And you start to see that inside of physics. They've never been able to identify an electron with the physical eye. It escapes them every time, right? Because that's the secret of nature. It's not going to give up its secret like that, right? And so it's the same way of manifesting. I call it the bridge of incident. We'll be practicing these practices, and all of a sudden, right, it has a very Uranus type of energy, like unexpected, or all of a sudden, we get, like, people be getting checks in the mail. We've had multiple people get checks in the mail from banks that they don't even bank with. I mean, it sounds crazy. I am telling you the honest to God truth. You can ask Rob Bailey. She on the line. She's been a part of these conference calls before when people come on and share their story, right? But see, the logical brain say how. Like today, one of my homies, Pokey, this dude went to jail. They sentenced him to 17 years. I gave him some techniques to do. They had already sentenced him. He ended up coming back up to court, and now he's out of jail. He only served like 2 years, right? Today, he called me today. He's like, man, I got a check from Dorothy Brown for $100. I don't know why. I owe the state so much money, but they sent me a check. But I be explaining to him how to do these techniques. You know what I mean? He's like, I thought of you, Melly, because they call me Melly in the hood. It's Melly. They're like, Melly, I thought of you and all the stuff you be talking about on YouTube, yada, 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 yada. And it's working. It's working. It's working. And I just be laughing at people because I be like, it's a law. It has no choice but to work. So we have to know what we want, right, and why we want what we want. You know what I mean? And the how part comes through me teaching. Like, okay, this is how it's done. This is how you do it. This is when you need to do these techniques because there's different times of the day where you should be engaged in doing certain techniques because different energies around us are heightened and or lowered. And so when we know that, we can use it to our advantage. You know what I mean? So, you know, you practice, you know why, you got to know why you want to do this, why you need this, what you want, and then how, you know, the how you apply it. Not how it's going to come, but how do you apply it is more important.
Dope. So the testimonials, because I'm just trying to put my mind inside of the minds of the people. Like, you don't have to be a master for this to work, huh? All you have to do is what? Believe?
Boy, that's a good word. That's a sensitive word for people that become conscious. Oh, believe. You gotta know, brother. Right? You know, we hear that a lot, right? Right? You can't believe. That's a Christian. That's some Christian baloney. Believe.
And knowing is literalism, huh? To know.
That's right. To know. That's right. That's right. To know. So let me. I always like to use science, right? Because it's the perfect way. Because people who like to deal with facts and objective reality, I use the same thing that they call science, which is totally based on objective reality, to show that it's not completely what we think it is. So people on the line may be familiar with something called the placebo effect, right? And the placebo effect says that a person can take a sugar pill that's got diabetes or whatever they have, and they take a sugar pill, and all of a sudden their condition is treated or it's gone. Or they'll take a saline shot, and all of a sudden what they had is gone. Or they'll go through some type of hoax surgery, right? Like in one study, they had people went in on a hoax surgery. They made little cuts in the knee, like they actually went in there with a scope and made the people think when they woke up because they saw a scar on their leg that they actually had a surgery done. And they went back to those same people 5 years later versus the people who actually had a physical surgery. And the people who had the hoax surgery were doing better than the people who actually had the physical surgery. So when you start to study the placebo, they tell you what? The higher the placebo, the better the results are for the person who's dealing with the placebo. And also, if the doctor that is telling them that they're taking what they're taking is real, and they trust the physician, that adds even more juice to the outcome, right? So what does that tell you, right? Because we think everything is so fact-based. No, you didn't take an aspirin. No, you didn't take amoxicillin. No, you didn't get a physical surgery. No, you didn't take iodine through a needle. No, you didn't. You took sugar. You took water. You took a hoax surgery. But you're healed now. You're better now. You're walking around better than people who actually had a physical surgery with their knee. So what does that tell us about consciousness? It's not necessarily the facts. It's what you believe to be true. That the mind and the body will respond to. And the more you have faith in that belief or what it is that you think you're doing, the grander the results will be. So this is why you'll read in the parables of the New Testament when the lady came and she just wanted to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. She had so much faith that she just said, if I can just touch him, I'll be healed. See what I'm saying? So Jesus represents that personification, or Heru or Buddha or whatever you're more comfortable with, or Muhammad or whatever you're more comfortable with using as that figure, right? Then you'll see that the people, the more faith you have in the person who's elucidating the principles, the larger your outcome will be to better your personal situation. So we have to be very careful, man, and just be around here parroting stuff. But it's clearly other science out here that suggests, no, that's not totally 100% true. And if it's not totally 100% true, then that means there's something else going on here in consciousness that we're going to have to deal with. And so that's the part that I like to deal with, you know.
Okay, so someone would say, well, Minister Jew, if we should be not, I thought the axiom is know thyself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Knowing things makes us literal. So if I know myself, don't I take myself back into like a Piscean dynamic, an analog world? Don't I want to exist in the virtual reality? So why should I know myself?
It's easy. To know thyself means that you understand the processes of your own consciousness. That's what that means. That's what that means. But people think to know thyself means I know that I come from a Benin lineage, or I know that I come from, hold on, y'all. I'm still on. Give me like 5 minutes. Right? So, hold on, y'all. Hold on a second. It's my wife. Give me 1 second.
Good stuff, y'all. I'm going to let y'all in on this for a second so y'all can do some questions. I know y'all got them. So, yeah, good stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'm back. So to know thyself means to know the processes of how your own consciousness works. Not necessarily all the external things that make you who you think you are. This is just a garment that you're wearing. Everything in this world fades. Everything. All these buildings that we see, they're going to fade eventually. The pyramids are going to drop eventually. All of this stuff is going to erode here. So that can't be the real know thyself. These bones, it's going to deteriorate. The skin, this flesh, we reach a climax, a peak, 30 years old, then we get over to 30 to 40, then we start to decline and go back down. Anything physical is going to deteriorate. But consciousness itself has the ability to exist and does exist outside of the body. And I got a bunch of neuroscience on that too, that shows when you start to stimulate structures in the right hemisphere of the brain, your consciousness leaves the body. So people talk about out-of-body experiences, all of these things. That's when you become a true master, to understand that you're not limited to a corporeal body. That's knowing thyself. But again, that takes practice. So, that's a whole other conversation. And I try to keep it where people can really use the information to advance their immediate lives, right? Because this thing is like a flex fuel. I've created a system that allows you to manifest physical things and at the same time exercise the same structure that's going to allow you to have spiritual experiences. It's a default system. One automatically is going to do the next because it's the same structure that you're using to facilitate both of the dynamics in the brain, right? But I like for people to be able to get to the point where they realize, okay, I can create this, I can create this, I can create this. Then they realize, okay, I'm comfortable, my family's good, I've garnered a situation where my money is straight, my health is good. Now I can start focusing on some other things that go beyond this physical because I don't have to stress anymore about the things in the physical world.
Okay, man, what you just said, a good movie I just thought about was Dr. Strange. So Dr. Strange, basically let everybody know that, man, it's a lot of worlds going on. simultaneously. All right. So yeah, briefly, Minister Drew, if you could just talk about your program, and then let people know how they can, go about that, and then I can open it up for some question and answer.
Okay, man, you can find me at theimaginationguru.com. Again, theimaginationguru.com. Make sure you put the. You got to put theimaginationguru.com. You go there, and it's real simple. I deal with simplicity. I know when I'm talking, it seems complex, but I try to make it real down to earth so people can understand. I got 2 memberships: quantum imaging membership, quantum scriptures membership, and I got a consultation tab for people who are interested in the positron pass technique, and they may not want to join the membership on a month-to-month basis. They got a pressing issue, and they want to have a consultation, and I can help them build a scene or a scenario to help them recreate the past moment that's brought them trauma in the now. I've had many people come to me with a lot of women have been sexually abused, and I'm realizing that in this work. A lot of women have come to me for that, to recreate and restructure that moment. People have had physical ailments where they can't do certain things anymore because of accidents that they've had. We've had people overcome, ailments in the body, diseases. So it just depends on what a person is going through. So those are the only things that we have available. And I got the ebook over there, Imagination at Work. If you're interested in reading that, it's a real short read, but it's compact with data. Talks about some of the stuff. And I give a lot of examples in there in real time of stuff that has happened on the world stage that resembles quantum consciousness and manifestation. And you can also get it on Amazon, Imagination at Work, if you want a physical copy. So that's it, man. That's the stuff that I have available for the people. If they're interested, 2 memberships, a book, and a consultation tab. Try to keep it simple so people don't be scatterbrained all over the place trying to decide what they want to participate in. And that's it, pretty much.
Okay.
And if you want to reach me, you can call me at 877-345-3797. Again, it's 877-345-3797. That's the business line. It's available from 10 a.m. to like 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, that's 877-345-3797. From 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can call anytime during that time.
Man, fire. All right, the line is open. Take your time. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody at once, but the line is open to holler at the brother as long as he can answer questions, man. So the line is open. Go ahead.
Peace. Hey, Drew. This is Ross.
Hey, what's up, Ross?
What's up? Hey, I just want to thank you. That was a great call. And for anybody on the line, I got personal testimonies from working with the priesthood, since about 2013. And everything that this brother is speaking of is true. I myself have received checks from bank accounts that did not belong to me just by doing some of this work. So, I really encourage you, if you're really looking to step your manifestation game up, your imagination game up, to get with the brother, because the work is real.
I appreciate that, Rob. Thank you.
Definitely.
Peace and love, Minister Drew. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I totally appreciate your work and your service. I know you probably don't remember me, but I contacted you last year, and I IM'd you and told you that my son was diagnosed with leukemia. And you said, "Don't worry, sister. I got some stuff that we're going to do. Just give me the hospital, the address, the room number." And I sent you all that information along with a picture. And I just knew that, the work that you were doing, I just believe in it, right? And I am so happy to say today, cancer-free, in remission, all good. All good. All good.
That's amazing,
I just want to say thank you, because I did reach out to you. You were one of the first. I was part of the Imagination group a year or so ago, and I spoke with Ample and all that. But then when all that stuff went down, I'm like, oh, gosh, So I called you and reached out. You said, just give me all the information, where he at, doctor name, hospital, room number, all that. So I appreciate your services and your work. It's amazing.
Thank you, and we love you for that, for sharing that. Sis, let me say this. It be so many people that call me, like, I can't remember it all. Like, it, and then to hear it later, you know, it's always a good feeling to know that people are having experiences, whether they contacting us or not, and that's really the biggest blessing that anybody can receive, you know. So we appreciate that. And if you listen to this sister, what she just said, I said, give me the name of the doctor, the hospital, the room number. It's a reason that I asked for all that stuff, because I've done a lot of research on prayer studies. And when you blindly pray for people, that doesn't work. Certain specifics have to be engaged. So when people just be like, oh, pray for Florida, oh, pray for Houston, that's not adequate. It's a methodology even to prayer. So, sister, congrats, much love to you and your family, and continued health and blessings to you and yours.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I really don't even know how to come out with this, man. I heard you say something about an inner out-of-body experience. Was I right? Now, I kind of had one of them. I kind of had one of them where I was kind of a person was believing into Christianity for a minute, and I was kind of going into a confused moment. I was going into Muslim services for a moment, and I kind of see my spirit jump out of my body, man, and run out of their services. But you know, I never told nobody that but my mom. And you know, but when you said that, man, it was enlightenment, and it was I can't explain what that was, but what I just explained to you. So if you could.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Many of you may listen to hip-hop, I'm not sure, but a rapper by the name of Prodigy passed a few months back, and he had an article with a doctor, where he said he saw an entity in his room, and it scared him half to death, and he had been feeling really good. He was battling sickle cell. But he said prior to that experience, he had been feeling great. And then that night when he had that experience with the shadow being in his room, he said the next day he felt so bad that they had to take him to the hospital. And from there, he started back experiencing some of the pains that come along with the sickle cell. Now, I'm bringing that up because you mentioned something being outside of your body. Now, the brain, whenever the right hemisphere of the brain becomes the predominant sense of self, because you got two senses of self, one in the right hemisphere, one in the left. When the one on the right becomes predominant, it suspends the language centers in the left hemisphere of the brain, and it projects itself as an external entity. I got neuroscience on this too, multiple case studies to show this, where that sense of self becomes dominant, and it will appear to be something outside of yourself. You will physically be seeing a shadow being or yourself outside of your body. Now, if you remember, when he asked me about are there any sounds that we should be listening to, I said your perception about what makes you feel good is the most important thing. Now, if you have an experience like that and you don't have a guide or a teacher to tell you about what's happening in your body and in your mind, then naturally people are afraid of that. Because you're like, whoa, what the hell just happened to me? And we get a sense of nervousness, right? So our immediate response to something that is spiritually happening to us is one of paranoia and fear. So when our brains are, and mind you, like if you looked at yourself in the mirror right now, you wouldn't be afraid of yourself if you looked at your physical self in the mirror right now. You're not afraid of looking at yourself. But because you don't know that part of you has projected, like I explained this before, everything in the external world is a reflection of what this body is capable of doing. So when you at Coachella and they got Tupac out on the stage as a hologram, or any other holograms that they put out on the stage, that is only a physical representation of what the mind of man and woman is possible of creating. External replicas, external to yourself, that look real. So what happens is, because you don't know that that's you freak out about it, and now you're sending a signal back into your own consciousness of paranoia and fear. And I said this in a free webinar that I did on that prodigy situation. Had he known that was just a projection of his own consciousness, and he accepted that part of his self as divine and divinity, he could have woke up the next morning and been sickle cell free.
Wow.
You see? So it is the perception around the phenomenon that creates and is the catalyst for what we experience in the physical moving forward. So, you know, it's heavy, but I teach this regularly when we have our webinars and conference calls. So my members know this stuff, man. They know, and they move accordingly, you know.
Minister Jew, quick question. As far as your meetings with the members, do you meet once a week, once a month? Is it webinars weekly? How does that go as far as what you provide?
Okay. I start with the premium membership, which is the quantum imaging membership. We have a monthly webinar, one. We have one monthly conference call, and we have every month you get 2 different techniques to add to your tool belt, right? So you get different practices every month to practice over the 28 or 38-day duration in a month, right, to hone your skills, plus the webinar, plus the conference call. And then, like, when people have testimonials, we send it out to all the people in the membership to let people know what other people are experiencing, that type of thing. The line is open if you want to call. You can email us. We make ourselves very available to our membership base. Also, anybody that's in the quantum imaging membership, you get to participate for free in the Quantum Scriptures conference calls. So if you want to know the deeper meanings of the parables and the allegories in the Bible, then you're able to come on the conference calls. Like tomorrow, we have a conference call for Quantum Scriptures. All of my memberships, both included, conference. So that's a perk to the people that's in the premium membership. Now, the Quantum Scriptures membership, same formula, once a month conference calls, once a month webinars, and we deal with different techniques out of the Book of Psalms to deal with multiple issues that people may be going through, right? So this is our first month. Quantum imaging been going on for like 2 years, but this is the first month that we actually introduced Quantum Scriptures. So it's still relatively new. So we haven't delved into the Book of Psalms yet, but we will in the upcoming weeks. And that's pretty much how that thing is going to flow. So those are the things that I made available.
Mr. Drew, are you by something? I don't know if it's someone's phone is on mute, but there's a lot of feedback. I don't know whose line that is.
No, I'm not by anything, man. I don't mind.
Okay. Oh, no sweat.
So I hope that answers your question, sis.
Yes, thank you. And is this the quantum practice? Is this the same thing as well as energy work? Is this the same thing? Would it fall into the same line as energy, vibration, and frequency sending out to the universe via imagination? Same thing?
Well, everything is a vibration, right? More so your emotion is more so the vibration. Frequency just means repetitive nature. So when people say your frequency, brother, what frequency are you on? The frequency just means how many times you come back to something. That's what creates the frequent. So the more that you do something, the more you get on that frequency. So the more you practice something, the more you tune into the frequency. The vibration is more of the feeling, right? So your emotion when you're doing these practices is what gets you into the vibration of it, right? And the frequency is how much you frequent it. So how often do you do it, which taps you into the frequency of the current, right? So when you study ancient traditions or people who do these practices, they'll tell you that it's easier. That's why people find it easier to step into something that's already created because the frequency is stronger versus stepping into something and trailblazing a new path because you have to now create a brand new frequency. So hopefully that answers your question. But we're using elevated emotion and imagery to create phenomena.
And I've never heard it broken down like that. Thank you so much. Awesome.
No problem.
Minister Jew, this is Rita Granberry. Have you are you familiar with the lady Dolores Cannon?
I am not familiar with that name.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering. I've heard her speak about this kind of technique before, or quantum healing, and I was just curious. Had you been exposed to that information? Were you taught this, or did you just found all of this on your own research?
Man, this is a great question. It's funny. Rob Bay, the lady, the beautiful young lady that first came through to expound on this work on this call, I think it was through her. I think she sent my comrade Ampu a video like 3 or 4 years ago called the double slit experiment, right? Which talks about observation and, you know, how what it is that we perceive it actually collapses waves into particle-like realities. And so when I saw that video, I was like, what the hell? Is this true? So I immediately, I found credible sources where I can, because I'm the type, I don't buy a whole lot of books. I buy a book by an accredited author, and then I'll read it multiple times because, and this is a jewel for people, when you start to buy multiple books on the same subject, that causes more confusion than clarity. You want to find you an author who is accredited and that knows his or her thing and read that thing 8 or 9 times so that you completely have it processed in your psychology. Because people will start to throw around a whole bunch of radical ideas, and that'll lead you to reaching and pulling for straws and not really getting clarity on the subject matter. So I went to find some books that I can read about the basic principles of quantum physics, where it's not, and the book that it's called The Quantum Enigma. Now my children are wanting my time and my attention. But the, hold on. It's my daughter. I can't tell her no. Hold on. Okay, and so what I did was I read that because they come from they don't like spirituality. So I like to read books from people who have a perspective of not wanting it to be concerning anything spiritual. That way I know they're going to give me the hard science behind it. And then because of my work over the years of studying spirituality, I can find where it's correlating exactly to spiritual principles, right? And so I started to go down that path, you know, Dr. Quantum, Alan Wolf, all of his literature. And then from there, you know, I just became who I am, you know, and applying what came out of the consequences of the analysis of what quantum physics is saying about reality. And from there, I just kept growing and growing, and I turned out to be who I am today 4 years later, you know.
Amazing. Wow.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. When you go back to the past, as you were saying earlier, and you recreate it, does that mean you're creating the situation, or you're creating the outcome that you went through in your mind to make it different?
You're recreating the situation so that you can have a new circumstance or situation occur in the present or moving into the future. What you have to learn how to take out certain details. In certain parts of the hippocampus that deal with different details from scenarios and memory. And so the way that I like to explain it is, like, you know how you can go to, the courts and get a birth certificate or a death certificate or a marriage license, and they'll all be authentic certified copies. They won't be the original. They'll be a certified copy. And you can take that certified copy and go do official business anywhere with it. So it's the same thing with memory. Even though you're living right now, you walking around with a copy from something that happened 10 years ago. It's not the original anymore because you're not there in the physical spatial location. The original is where it physically went down in that time slot where it happened. That's the original moment. So what you're doing is you're carrying a snapshot or a certified copy of something that happened in the past, which is acting just as good as the original. And you're doing certified business with a copy of something. You're sitting down and you start reminiscing about something bad. You start crying. Your body start aching. Or if it's something good, you might be smiling, or whatever the case may be, right? So we teach people how to alter the original, right? So that now moving forward, they have a different version of the certified copy, which creates a different response in real time, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's powerful, and I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Just a few more questions for anybody, and then any further questions, just hit the brother up on the email. I know he got the youth. You got to get to him.
I have a quick question, Minister Jew. My name's Stephen. So you mentioned earlier that when you fast, that helps activate the hippocampus. And I know there's a couple of us here in the group that are actually fasting at the moment, including Ken. I was just wondering, what kind of advice can you give us for us to be able to reach our goals that we set for each other, for ourselves? I mean, do you suggest us write it down, or use a mantra, or what do you suggest? What can you suggest for that?
Well, I absolutely suggest you write it down. Absolutely, because that's like one of the key ingredients to quantum realization is to write it down. It's equivalent to a movie script in a movie. The actor has to get the role. He has to understand his lines before he can go out there and perform. So you have to. That's the Tahuti principle. You have to write it. Or that's the Tahuti or the Aaron principle or the Hermes Trismegistus is writing. You have to write the script down, right? So you have to write down exactly what it is that you want. And in the neuroscience that supports that it says that people who write their goals down on paper actually realize them at an 80% rate versus the people who don't write them down at all, right? So it's a power in writing. I can show where Octavia Butler is semi-responsible for putting Donald Trump in office from a sci-fi novel. So when you understand the power in that, absolutely, you want to write it down. You want to constantly recite it. You want to make it a part of your being because that will start to change your self-talk and dialogue about how you see yourself. So that's just a minor tip that you can use to get started. Absolutely, write the goals down. Repeat them daily. In the morning when you wake up, make it the first thing that you encounter, when you wake up to get your day started,
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem. So I can take one more question, and then I got a jam.
One more question, and then anybody that want to follow up, hit the brother on his email or his social media or the number.
What role does meditation play in all this manifestation process of the quantum physics?
Well, meditation is more of a yin type of energy. It's more receptive you're looking to receive a message more so than to create something. So you're looking, meditation is more of the feminine side of creation. Visualization is more of the masculine side because you're looking to produce something externally or in the particle world. So it has two different, but you're still using the same structure. The hippocampus is still responsible for the theta wave in meditation as well, just as it is in visualization. So you're using the same structure. It's just like a car. Are you using use a flex fuel vehicle? Are you using regular gas, or, you know, are you plugging this thing up electric? So it just depends on what it is that you're trying to get out of whatever it is that you're doing, right? So if you're meditating, you're looking to receive messages. It actually helps build the intuitive nature of man, right? Your gut feeling starts to become more stronger when you're meditating because you're amplifying the yin part of your being, right? But when you're looking to manifest something, that's an outward going energy. You're looking to create something. You're using the creative forces of light, right, to manifest something. So it just depends on where you're at in your development, which way you want to go, you know.
Dope. Minister Drew, can you give out your information too? So, you know, any other further questions, you know, people can follow up with you at a later date just in case anybody didn't jot it down.
Okay, absolutely. First thing first, go to the website, theimaginationguru.com. The Imagination Guru. The memberships are there. The consultation tab is there if you're interested. If you want to call me, you can call me at 877-345-3797 between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, it's 877-345-3797. And then if you want to email me, you can email me at info@theimaginationguru.com. Again, that's info@theimaginationguru.com. If you want to communicate with me through an email, we're pretty good at getting back with emails and talking to people, etc. And that's